Statues, portraits, even streets bear his name.
He has become an icon of reason and not a solitary thinker.
I don't want to dwell too much on Spinoza's life, except to say that he has a good claim on being one of the most consequential philosophers to have ever lived, but he was also, as Bertrand Russell wrote, the noblest and most lovable of the great philosophers. He was one of the first Enlightenment advocates for real democracy, and was the first to really criticise the Bible as just a text. He was vilified for his perceived atheism and excommunicated from the Jewish community where he lived, who said that the Lord will not spare him, the anger and wrath of the Lord will rage against this man, and bring upon him all the curses. However, despite being ostracised from everyone, he searched his entire life for what he called the true good. He wanted to find out how to live an ideal and virtuous life, how, ultimately, to be free. Before we get to the juicy bits, we have to do the grunt work. We have to map out Spinoza's idea of the universe. Then we can understand our place in it. It might sound a little bit complicated at first, but bear with me. If you get this, or at least just let it wash over you and stick with it, it will change how you think. Give me a few minutes to get through the complicated bits, and then we'll get to the interesting stuff, and it should all come together. If you could condense Spinoza's metaphysics, his first principles, into one sentence, it would be this: being is one. Put another way, the many is one. What that means is actually quite simple. Everything, us, the forest, animals, plants, stars, the laws of physics, are many things that are part of one thing: nature. We forget this, of course. We think of ourselves as independent, as separate. But we also know that we're not, and we know this even more in the modern period. We know that we're made of atoms. We know that we need food, water, oxygen, energy from outside of us to sustain those atoms. We know that we rely on wood and tools and gravity and, of course, each other. We know about the circle of life, the interdependent ecosystem that the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom lives within, and we know that one thing affects another. In short, we know that everything is connected. So how does he understand this many things in one nature truth? Well, he wants to lay it out logically and represent it in a kind of geometrical, mathematical pattern so that we can use it to build more complex ideas with. So instead of just saying many things and one nature, he says that there are three parts to the universe: substance, attributes, and modes. We usually think of substances as the different things in the universe: air, us, wood, deer, dirt, for example. It's just the stuff that things are made out of. Attributes, on the other hand, are the way we experience those substances. Spinoza says there are two that we know of: extension and thought. We have actual material trees, and then the idea of trees in our heads. A mode is the form or shape the substance takes. The substance wood, for example, could be in the mode of a tree, or a chair, or a door. It's the substance of wood in different forms, shapes, modes. But wait, Spinoza wants to be more specific. A substance, he says, if it's to be defined properly, should be an independent thing. He provides definitions.
By substance, I understand what is in itself and is conceived through itself, i.e., that whose concept doesn't have to be formed out of the concept of something else.
So let's take a leaf. Is it a substance? Well, it's only a substance if it's in itself, if it's independent, if it's conceived through itself, if it doesn't have to be formed out of something else. But of course, it does. It's dependent on the branch and the tree. So is the tree a substance? Well, no, because it's formed out of the soil, the air, and the birds that disperse its seeds. A substance should be an independent thing, yet thinking through this thought experiment, everything is in some sense determined, dependent, an extension of things outside of it. So if we're defining substances strictly, it turns out there's only one: nature. Trees, people, plants, animals, we're all different modes, different shapes of nature, of matter. Spinoza saw nature as God. In fact, he usually wrote God or nature. They're one and the same thing. Why is this? Well, he thought of it like this. God is meant to be this infinite, all-powerful, omnipresent, omniscient lawmaker and lawgiver. But if that's the case, he can't be outside of nature. If he's not just part of nature, if he's not everywhere at once, he can't be omnipresent, he can't be infinite. He must, to be those things, be part of everything, with nothing inseparable from him, or her, or it. God couldn't be outside the universe, Spinoza realised. He was the universe. The ultimate laws were gravity, mathematics, the laws of physics, of cause and effect. So God, knowing all, seeing all, controlling all, had to not just be part of those laws, but actually be those laws, as if they were an extension of itself. Today, this is called pantheism. Spinoza was writing at the beginning of the Enlightenment and during the scientific revolution. He was trying, in some way, to square an old universe with a new one of science, of reason, of experimentation. He saw that all things, if you studied them carefully enough, were implicated and affected by everything else. Everything was clearly part of one big, ordered ecosystem, although he didn't have that word, ecosystem, to use yet. It was a revolutionarily modern scientific view. Spinoza writes,
In nature, there is nothing contingent. All things have been caused by the necessity of the divine nature to exist and produce an effect in a certain way.